First order of business is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item D, the Norton Street drain.
Okay, so noted. Jess?
Resolution 14. Resolution 14, the Glinsky drain.
Okay, so noted. Anything else? The minutes from July 21st, was there any errors or omissions? Mover and second of the minutes, please. Serna and Moore, all in favor? Carried. Next, we have the Norton Street drain. So, George, there you are.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, a member of council. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Can you give us an outline of the nature of the proposed work, please?
Absolutely. So the Norton Street drain was a petition drain submitted by the Township Road Authority. In, I believe, 2006, Norton Street in Orwell was extended. However, the storm sewer servicing was not extended, which over time has led to erosion on the private properties adjacent to the road extension. The road extension featured a turnaround circle there, so there was limited ability to collect water there within the existing right-of-ways. So a petition was submitted, which has allowed us to construct some minor ditching on private lands adjacent to it, collect it to a catch basin, and then convey that water down to the natural water course and hopefully address this erosion and give it outlet for the road here. It's been designed to a standard storm sewer design. There's lots of grade on the pipe, so it's only an 8-inch pipe, but it's a small service area. If I believe that I'm under the understanding that township is going to use their own forces to construct this work. But we did prepare an estimate in case it was tendered. I believe the tendered price, including our fees, conservation fees, and the allowances paid to the landowners for the right of way to construct that on their property, was $27,000. And I believe it will be constructed this year by township staff pending approval. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you, George. Any questions for George so far? All right, Allison, can you advise if anyone submitted any comments or concerning the drainage report?
Your Worship, no comments were received regarding the Norton Street drain.
Okay. Next, George, can you explain the next steps in the process?
Absolutely. The next I guess a notice of quarter revision needs to be mailed. However, because of the work that's being completed here, the township is paying all the cost here because it is servicing the road. So if the township wished, they could waive their right to a quarter revision. And at which point, once the appeal period expired for consideration tonight, third reading could be completed.
Okay. Thank you, George. Matt, have you got any comments or?
No, nothing to add from what George has advised.
Okay. Any questions from council? Mover and seconder, the engineer's report for the Norton Street Drain 2022 be accepted. Bylaw number 22-55 being a bylaw to provide for the Norton Street Drain 2022 drainage works be read a first, second time and provisionally adopted. Serna, Jager, all in favor? Carried. We got one more. Mover and second, the quarter revision for the Norton Street Drain is scheduled to be held on September 1st, 2022 at 7:30. Mover, Glinsky, on favor, carried. Yeah, Martin. Thank you, George.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, Matt, you're up next with a Port Bruce traffic calming.
Yes, good evening, Your Worship and Council. This first report is brought to Council's attention as a follow-up to a direction given for consideration to convert Collins Street in Port Bruce surrounding Wanacott Park to one-way directional flow. So the Public Works Department circulated the concept drawing previously received by council in 2021 to the public and received varying input on with those in favor and those opposed to the works as described in the report attachments. The clear positives include the creation of space for pedestrians to walk around the park and either side of the road, and the clear negatives note the reduction in available parking. So noting the accommodated $15,000 budget, which accounts for only signage and line painting to allow traffic to drive in one direction and pedestrians the painted ability to walk on the road surface, staff do recommend suspending such an undertaking absent of the community suggested traffic study, engineering design, and budget increase to accommodate a difficult sidewalk construction due to poor grade control in the area. So this recommendation is in line with the adopted Parks and Rec master plan, which accommodates a Port Bruce Beach and waterfront plan, which can review such project need and desire with considerable public input. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Questions from Matt on Port Bruce traffic calming? Seeing none, mover and second, report number PW 2233 entitled Port Bruce traffic calming be received, and that Collins Street one-way conversion be suspended pending future budget considerations. Whitner, Jagger, all in favor? Carried. And Springfield Road, no parking zone not.
Yes, through you, your worship. This report is brought forth as a follow-up to council direction provided to seek public input on whether a no parking zone is desired by those residents impacted by the food truck located at the intersection of Springfield Road and Highway 3. So again, the Public Works Department sought community feedback as shown in the report attachment, which show that most impacted residents are not in favor of implementing a no parking zone. And accordingly, staff recommend that no parking restrictions be put in place and the county be notified of that decision. I can answer any questions council may have.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Questions from Matt on this one? Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment, and similar to the previous report, I appreciate the time that staff has taken to consult and listen to the different opinions. I think that was worthwhile, and now we know that, if it ain't broken, then just leave it alone. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mover and second, report number PW 2233 entitled Springfield Road no parking zone update be received. That no action be taken at this time to implement a no parking zone on Springfield Road, Elgin County Road 40. And that staff advise the Elgin County of Elgin Council accordingly. Mover and Glinski, all in favor? Carried. And the next one is Pressy Line.
Yes, so as council is aware, Pressy Line has been under construction for some time now, allowing for 3 construction phases to complete the project. Phase 3 is scheduled to commence in 2023. However, there are significant challenges with utilities in this area, and complete design is required now in order to allow those utilities to prepare for relocation. So while noting the 2023 budget has not yet been presented, staff are seeking for council direction to proceed with pre-engineering work, which will allow for staff to undertake the design work internally this coming winter in order to allow for public consultation and utility relocation to be undertaken in 2023 and construction to be undertaken in 2024. The estimated cost of such pre-engineering is estimated to be about $40,000, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Questions for Matt on the Pressy Line? Mover and second, report number PW 2253 entitled Pressy Line 2023 capital request be received. And that notwithstanding the 2023 capital budget has not yet been presented, that staff be authorized to proceed with the undertaking pre-engineering services required to design a Pressy Line from Springfield Road, Elgin Road 40 to Catherine Street. Cerna and Whitner, all in favor? Carried. And FCM funding?
Yes, so in 2020, the township was notified of the successful application to receive $50,000 in funding from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, part of which included earmarking $30,000 to procure and implement asset management software. Since that time, the township's made strides in beefing up our asset management undertakings, which to date have included a full review of the status and financial modeling of core asset depreciation and adoption of the core asset management plan, all of which was only possible by the creation of the asset management analyst position in 2021. So now that we've gotten into the weeds in asset management implementation, we can see that software can provide a benefit, but only if implemented at the appropriate time. There are a number of reasons not to implement a new software at this time, noted in the report. And staff are bringing this consideration forward to council, noting that a resolution was prior passed to implement such software in order to obtain this funding. So by proceeding with the staff recommendation to not implement a new software at this time, the funding for this initiative may not actually be lost completely. The road needs study component was successfully undertaken and funded by the program, and staff have additionally reached out to the FCM program coordinators to determine whether the remaining funding allocation can be repurposed to offset part of our asset management success to date. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Matt. It was my understanding a lot of this can be done in-house, Matt, is that correct?
So right now we're at a point where we're still getting into the weeds with our asset management programming. We've done our core assets. Now we're working on non-core assets. So implementing a software right now might muddy the water, where it be a hindrance to our progress as we get through our non-core assets. Then once we have all of our assets accommodated for, we'll look for a program that will assist us in reaching the next step, where it's kind of out of order right now to proceed with the software.
Okay. All right, questions for Matt on the FCM funding? Noni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wondering, I think later another report is talking about a future road study as well. Do you know if that could be where the funding could be moved toward?
Well, we can check with the FCM coordinator as well. There's, I was in touch with them throughout this week, actually. It's a new coordinator on the file, so she's still reaching out to her superiors to see how things might be able to be changed. A transfer payment agreement has not yet been signed for this funding, so they're still looking to have the money spent appropriately. So I'm hopeful that we'll have some success in being able to utilize it in some way.
Any other questions for Matt? Mover and second report number PW 2254 entitled FCM funding change of scope be received. Township staff not undertake the procurement, implementation of asset management software in 2022. Jager and Glinsky, all in favor? Carried. Imperial Road, no parking?
Yes, so it was at the July 7th council meeting this year that staff were directed to further review alternatives for the no parking zone in Port Bruce on Imperial Road. And further, that other village streets could be reviewed for such traffic consideration. So it's staff's recommendation that in lieu of site-specific reviews and reporting, that phase 4 of the current road safety audit program be expanded and recommended to the budget committee with the purpose of reviewing all village streets, notably all roads in Port Bruce and in Springfield. So with this review, that site-specific deficiencies can be flushed out and bundled for appropriate operating and capital procurement implementation and potential correction. So adding an additional phase to the road safety audit program is estimated to cost around $30,000, which would be recommended to the budget committee. And I can answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Questions for Matt on Imperial Road, no parking? Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Matt. So for the 30,000, we're getting a report on the roads in Springfield and Port Bruce. And that's it.
That's correct. So the first 3 phases of the road safety audit program were only on the rural roads. They did not include village streets. So there's separate guidelines that will be looked at on the village streets and additional reviews that aren't part and parcel with the first 3 phases. There's other things such as these sight lines and potential speed limit reductions that can occur on village streets that currently all have consistent speed limits, consistent criteria applied to them, and we'll get other recommendations from looking at that. So it's a new set of criteria being looked at, but it's part of the same program.
It seems like a lot of money. You know, some of this we could do ourselves, I think, but that's my opinion.
Max?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Matt. Well, you're looking at this study in regard to safety on our streets in the village of Springfield in particular, I'm talking. Do we have anyone at the present time that's enforcing the parking bylaws on our streets in this village?
Through you, your worship, Councilor Moore, I can answer that. Our manager of bylaw enforcement, Scott Sutherland, he oversees bylaw. We do have so that gets administered through Scott. If there's any issues, those emails can come forward through that. And I might leave that there, but it is through our bylaw enforcement division.
We have instances in the village at the present time. One in particular, a tractor trailer, I presume it's a 52-foot trailer, rolls in on the street, usually on Friday, sits there till Monday morning, not off on the shoulder, taking up more than half of the village paved street. And it's just a matter of time until there's somebody is going to try to come around that, and somebody coming around the corner right there next to it, not stopping, we're going to have a major collision. I've had some other concerns in other parts of the village of people doing the same thing, not necessarily trucks, but 2 or 3 vehicles. Their laneways are full. They have all these vehicles and no one is enforcing it. I'll bring that to council's attention because something is going to happen.
Can you bring that to
It's gonna be
Scott's attention to check in on, especially on the transport? That seems to be dangerous. Any other questions on Imperial Road, no parking? Dominic?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wondering if, because throughout the last 3 years, we looked at different hamlets or developed areas where there were schools, and there were some concerns about doing things a little maybe piecemeal, like one area at a time. So could that be included as part of the villages in terms of like hamlets or developed area, so that there could be some consistency?
Yes, we can definitely add that to the scope of work for I guess that we call this phase 4. My recommendation would be with that we look at all streets in the township that haven't been reviewed under the first 3 phases to be added to.
Any other questions for Matt? Mover and seconder report number PW 2255 entitled Imperial Road No Parking Zone Update be received. The township staff be directed to include phase 4 road safety audit of the township village streets in 2023 budget deliberations. Mover, Jagger, all in favor? Carried. Annual investment, Adam?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last month, council was brought a reserves planning review, which details how much the township keeps in its reserves and the various purposes that they're used for. Tonight, I brought forward a logical successor to that report, which explains what we do with our reserves until they're used for their intended purposes. So funding that is not required for immediate use is invested. The township has an existing investment policy that requires the treasurer to bring forward a report on the township's investments annually. Page 36 of the agenda satisfies this requirement by providing council a list of township's investments and their returns during the year. The township's overall investment returns during 2021 were 3.19%, including which includes non-operating cash, and 5.3%, which excludes non-operating cash. Beyond mandatory reporting, I've provided a brief review of the township's investment strategy by comparing investment returns against similar investment options available on the market and against annual inflation. My review findings are as follows. The township current investment strategy, which primarily uses an agency called One Investment, has competed well with similar investment options over the past 5 years, which is the duration that we've been using One Investment. The township's investment returns have typically outpaced inflationary pressures with the exception of 2021. Non-residential building construction prices increased by nearly approximately 17% during 2021. And overall, the township's investment practices are sound. Funding retained in reserves has grown faster than its intended future costs, thereby creating a net benefit for residents. There are, however, a couple areas where improvements are being recommended for council's consideration. First, cash on hand, particularly held in the township savings account, is recommended to be applied to investment vehicles that will generate greater returns. Money that is not being used for current operations should be put to work to benefit residents whenever possible. Secondly, and related to this idea, I perceive the township's investment position to be somewhat conservative. When looking at historical data, the only investment option that can reliably outpace capital inflationary pressures over the long term is the township's equity portfolio. So there should be a greater emphasis on this type of investing. The difficulty in this regard is that equity portfolios regularly decline. The Toronto Stock Exchange, for example, experienced negative returns 20 out of the last 79 calendar years. We are actually experiencing such a decline during 2022. While equity markets can be erratic and unpredictable in the short term, over the long term, they've been quite predictable. In fact, since 1955, the TSX's worst 10-year period was a positive return of 2.1%. And over the last 10 years, one investment's Canadian equity portfolio has generated an average of 11.99%. So overall, what I'm proposing for council is to consider a policy revision that requires the township's treasurer to maintain investment portfolio in fixed ranges with the aim to generate greater investment returns. Success in this regard would result in a reduced need to generate future property tax and rate increases. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I'm quite an involved report. I'm going to have to put my trust in you that you're judging the correct investment for the township, and it's going to not put us in jeopardy. So you've got my trust. So questions for Adam. Dominique?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I like what I see. Again, it shows analysis and then a strategy. So seems to be the pattern now. And I think that's a really good one. I did have one question on page 40, for example, you talk about targets. So recommended targets, 20-25%. Where are those targets from? Is that based on a best practice for municipalities in general, or has that been customized just for us based on our situation?
Yes, thank you. So one investment and indirectly MFOA, the Municipal Finance Officers Association, were consulted in the implementation of this investment strategy. We started with more of a basic like cookie cutter investment strategy, and then we customized it to Malahide specific needs. The purpose of this report, the purpose of bringing this report forward now is that we just recently did an AMP update, which better defined our future capital needs, our future cash outlays, and our reserve report, which detailed how we retain funding. So it's very much a customized investment strategy that's tailored to Malahide's needs.
Any other questions for Adam? Mover and seconder report number FIN 2221 entitled Annual Investment Report we received. The township's investment policy be amended as presented. Serna, Winder, all in favor? Carried. All right, Allison, you're going to update us on the Compliance Audit Committee?
Yes, through your worship. This is a follow-up to a report brought forth on June 2nd, where council passed a resolution to establish a joint election compliance audit committee for the 2022 election. Since this agreement, advertising for prospective committee members and review of applicants has occurred. It is being recommended by staff to all prospective councils to endorse the appointment of the 4 individuals listed in the report for the committee, as each have the qualifications and significant experience required to be a member of the committee. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thanks, Allison. So this is the same committee for all lower tier in Elgin?
Yes, that is correct.
Questions for Allison? Seeing none, mover and seconder report, clerk 2209 entitled Joint Elgin Compliance Audit Committee Appointment 2022. Recommendations be received for information. Council endorsed the appointment of Christine Sprigmore, Andrew Wright, Daniel Ross, and Dr. Zachary Spicer to sit on the Joint Elgin Compliance Audit Committee for the period of 22 to 26. And further, the council consider giving 3 readings to the bylaw confirming those appointments. Moore, Glinsky, all in favor? Carried. Next, we have the 2 applications. Adam, you're going to deal with them?
Yes, thank you, your worship. So these are both zoning bylaw amendments. Council will recall holding public meetings for both. So I'll start with the first one for Rocks Farms Limited. This is a proposed severance. They went through and applied the standard zoning requirements for surplus farmhouse severance. It was subsequently, after the public meeting was held, the Land Division Committee at the county issued provisional consent to the application. So now it lines up with what we heard at the public meeting for the zoning amendment. So council can be in a position to finally pass the bylaw and implement it. So unless there's any questions, there's nothing further to add.
Okay. Questions for Adam on either one of these applications? We've dealt with them before. This is kind of just housekeeping. The first one, report number DS 22 to 29 entitled follow-up report zoning bylaw amendment application of Rocks Farm Limited be received. Council finalized the approval of subject property application by passing bylaw number 22-46. Serna, Jager, all in favor? Carried. And the second one is the Berkelmans, so mover and seconder report number DS 22-30 and follow-up report zoning bylaw amendment application of Frank and Sherry Berkelmans we received. Council finalized their approval of the subject application by passing bylaw number 22-47. Moore and Widner, all in favor? Carried. Next, we have correspondence. There's 9 items. Anyone wish to make comment in regard to the correspondence? Jess?
Mayor Manel, since all of us have seen on television the closing of emergency rooms and shortage of doctors and nurses and so on, I think we should support the Bruce Peninsula, that something should be done as far as getting more doctors, making more doctors available. And the first thing that needs to happen is that the Canadian universities have to open up more space for Canadian students to take part, and also open up more residency for would-be doctors. And the third thing, make accreditation of foreign doctors less onerous than it is now. So for those reasons, I'd like us to support the number 4, South Bruce Peninsula.
Yeah, I heard the news tonight. The federal government's given 2 weeks to have a committee to expedite the foreign doctors and nurses to come into the country and practice. And I think there's something 27,000 that are out there that are not accredited just because there's stumbling blocks. So I think that will help a lot, but I agree with you, Jess. Anything else that needs to comment or support? So we mover and seconder that we support number 4 and receive and file the balance. Serna and Blinsky, all in favor? Carried. Is there any other business before we move into bylaws? Okay, go ahead, Jeff. The first bylaw, mover and seconder of the bylaw number 22-44, being a bylaw to provide for the drainage works on Glinsky Drain, be read a third time, finally passed and properly signed and sealed. Serna, Jagger, all in favor, carried. Yeah, go ahead. Next bylaw, mover and seconder of the bylaw number 22-56, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Safe Roads Engineering for the purpose of completing the Vienna Line culvert replacement design, be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed. Mover and Serna, all in favor? Next bylaw, moving second of the bylaw number 22-57 to be a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Safe Roads Engineering for the purpose of completing the Hacienda Road culvert replacement design, given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed. Blinsky and Jagger, all in favor, carried. And mover and second of the council moving the closed session at 8:02. Pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, to discuss the following: labor relations, employee negotiation matter relating to staff recruitment matter relating to the IT department. 2, a proposed pending acquisition or disposition of land affecting the township relating to shared services agreement with local animal shelters. And 3, position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or be carried on behalf of the municipality or local board relating to the taxation matters. Mover and seconder. Mover and Serna, all in favor, carried. We're back on?
Yeah.
Okay. During the closed session, council provided direction to municipal staff regarding a staff recruitment matter relating to the IT department. And as a result, I need a mover and seconder. The council direct the mayor and clerk to execute an IT service agreement with its municipal partners. The council consider giving 3 readings to bylaw number 22-59, authorizing this IT service agreement. Mover and seconder, Serna. Mover, all in favor, carried. And number 2, that during the closed session, council provided the directions of municipal staff regarding a pending acquisition or disposition of land affecting the township related to a shared service agreement with a local animal shelter. This is nothing further to report. And statement number 3, during the closed session, council provided direction to the municipal staff regarding a plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or be carried on by, on, or behalf of the municipality or local board relating to taxation matters, and there's nothing further to report. So I need a mover and seconder that bylaw number 22-58 being confirmatory bylaw be given a first, second, third reading, properly signed and sealed. Mover and Serna, all in favor, carried. And council reconvene or adjourn its meeting at 8:51. We meet again on September 1st at 7:30. Glinsky and Winder, all in favor?